Hello, Brain Retraining family. I am back after an extended break. Honestly, it feels weird to be making a video right now. I have not posted in a while, as I know a lot of my core kind of YouTube family community was aware of and asking where I was. And to be honest, I just feel like I lost some motivation and drive for posting for a while, and that was for a number of reasons. But seeing a lot of where the brain retraining community has shifted in recent months or over the last year or so, I feel the need to start making some videos again. So for those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Teresa, and I am a licensed mental health therapist. I am also a yoga therapist, and I focus on chronic pain and illness recovery, trauma recovery, and holistic healing. So, where do I even begin? Where I wanted to start today was this idea of the illusion of healing, the illusion of searching for this quest of being fully healed, and how that can be this hamster wheel that people get trapped on, whether they are in the traditional Western medical model of healing or in the holistic world of healing. I have seen a shift where kind of this original brain retraining community that is out there really picked up the torch that started maybe with DNRS and Gupta and some of the initial brain retrainers, Joe Dispenza, this idea of recreate your reality, starting with your thoughts, starting with your day-to-day habits, and really this focus on eliminating too much obsession with symptoms, with labs, focusing on just recreating how you wake up each day and face your day so that you are really just focusing in on the positive things, on gratitude, on undoing the neural networks that were ingrained in this illness model and rewiring your brain to create new neural connections that were focused on healing. And unfortunately, I think for a myriad of reasons, one of them being a lot of obsession about diagnoses, which we see a lot on social media, especially TikTok, this kind of obsession with, well, what is the diagnosis? And while I do see a lot of merit in getting the correct diagnosis in a lot of, different circumstances, the obsession over it and the chasing down of multiple diagnoses and the wanting to have a label to explain things can become rather toxic and self-limiting. So how do we kind of hold space for both, right? And so even today, I've been taking a massive social media break, and I logged back into Facebook to reconnect with an old friend, and one of the first things that popped up on my feed was a Lyme group that I used to be really active in. And there is this huge argument happening about if it's ever possible to fully heal from Lyme versus just going into remission from Lyme, and the idea of, do the lab results really matter, or is symptoms all that matter? And this is something that I wanted to just speak candidly from my own experience about. I feel like part of the reason I got so burned out posting videos is I really always try to bring in science, evidence-based, scripted videos. And over time, I was like, I think I've kind of posted everything that there is to say from a science-based perspective on this. I have my course, everything's out there. Maybe what I was missing is personal experience and sharing that. So from my own experience, I really have been undergoing a deeper, more spiraled healing journey for myself the last year or so. And this is all tying together into the theme of what I wanted to talk about today. But in my own experience, I think you need a little mix of both, but the focus is on how you feel every day and what you focus on. So in my journey of using brain retraining as probably the #1 tool to regulate my nervous system, to understand how many of my symptoms were due to years of nervous system dysregulation from trauma, and that trauma included the trauma from just having chronic infections. In my case, I had Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella, tick-borne relapsing fever, reactivated Epstein-Barr virus or mono, mold exposure, and I also had a major spinal injury that related to a lot of chronic pain over the years. A lot of different things, hypermobile EDS, whatever. Anyway, the symptom and the diagnoses, again, were helpful to get at one point in my life because they did explain what I was dealing with, and they set me on the path to discovering the holistic treatments that I found, really getting me profoundly involved in herbalism and out of the pharmaceutical model, getting me profoundly involved in brain retraining and deeper in my own mental health practice, really diving into acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness, yoga therapy, to the point where I branched off and started my own YouTube channel and course trying to teach these skills to other people. But I will say that there was a power in those diagnoses where it gave an explanation for a lot of what I had been feeling for many years. It validated me, it validated my lived experience, and it helped me to feel seen. It gave me communities of people that I could share those experiences with. And those communities and then those books, those YouTube videos allowed me to explore and discover things that really did help me. However, then at some point we have to think, do those diagnoses become ingrained in our psyche to the point where they become self-limiting? Can we sometimes use those diagnoses as an excuse of, oh, well, I really can't do that because I have chronic Lyme? Do we end up having a really bad day and just assuming it maybe is a flare-up of something when in reality, even completely healthy people have bad days or bad weeks? Not just for myself, I'm saying this from the perspective of anyone who's really grappling with this concept of healing versus being healed versus our life is a healing journey. So what I want to say too is this concept of nervous system regulation being kind of the basis of how we view our quality of life, of how we show up in the world. And I give this example a lot, but I'm going to reuse it. It's the example of kind of a pressure release valve. And I know I'm dating myself because now everything's automatic, but back in the day when you used to have to go and undo the pressure release valve on your radiators in the winter when you first turned them on, or on your water heater, or you see this warning of the pressure is building up and you have to discharge some of that pressure somehow. So you turn the key, you release the water pressure and the heat, and now your water heater or your radiators work for another couple of weeks or months, hopefully. And then eventually you have to go and release the pressure a little bit again, and then everything functions. That is kind of how I view consistently using nervous system healing tools and brain retraining tools. I do think, however, if you're in an unhealthy environment, if you have unchecked triggers that are contributing to ongoing illness or stress or trauma, it's almost like you're trying to deal with a faulty water heater that's in really unsafe conditions. And so you're going to have to undo that pressure release valve maybe every single day to keep yourself at equilibrium until someone comes and repairs something, right? So this example is maybe the person who wants to heal, but they're still living in a moldy environment, or they want to regulate their nervous system, but they're living in an abusive home. It's not to say that it's hopeless. It's to say that those skills are never going to go to waste. Learning how to self-soothe, learning how to regulate your nervous system, how to shift from fight or flight mode into a parasympathetic rest and digest mode, or even a creative flow state, Those are all things that are always going to be helpful at any time. Doesn't matter what environment you're in. There's a reason that they teach meditation and deep breathing exercises even to military snipers, right? They're in one of the most stressful situations imaginable, and they use the skills to regulate themselves just enough to be effective at the job they have to do, and then they're right back into fight or flight mode. So whatever we can do to downshift our nervous system, take that break, recalibrate, and then go back into our day is going to be effective. However, overall big picture, we want to be removing triggers and stress wherever we can. In the case of mold, it might be remediation, getting out of the house. In the case of Lyme, it might be continuing to do a really intensive herbal protocol or taking antibiotics or whatever is prescribed. I took about 3 years worth of really intense herbal protocols. I still did the sauna. I still did the dry brushing. I still do the vibration plate. It's not to say that those things aren't still needed or don't still work. It's that there has to be a union of also recalibrating your nervous system, retraining your brain so that you don't keep returning to this state of identifying as someone who is chronically ill forever, or as identifying as someone who is constantly looking for this perfect healed state. I hear that a lot. Well, why me? Why do I get this, mono and everyone else heals and I'm the only one who ended up sick forever, or same with Lyme? Well, part of that could also be this kind of mental check-in. We don't know that just because your friend said, oh yeah, I had Lyme and I healed after antibiotics, we don't know for sure exactly how they're feeling. We don't know if it's someone who masks a lot of their symptoms with perfectionism or pushing through, or has other supports where their nervous system was already more regulated so they don't feel the effects as much as us. But this obsession over, well, why can't I be like that? Why don't my levels look back to normal? We need to stop the comparison game, right? So no one is ever fully healed in this life. There is no perfect person who has no illness in their body. It's how well we can function in the environment that we're in and get our nervous system to the point where we can feel safe. And once we feel safe, our cells feel safe, and our cells can begin to recalibrate. We can rewire our brain to view ourselves in new ways, and we start to feel better. We have more energy when we feel safe, and we can rest and we can recover. So I guess something that I want to shift a little bit in this channel for those of you who want to continue following along, is exploring a little bit of pushing out of our comfort zone in the brain retraining journey. So something I've been doing for myself in my journey is getting back into the fitness world, which I don't know if I ever thought I would be able to do when I was in my height of dealing with Lyme and all of these things. Way back in another lifetime, I was a personal trainer and a yoga teacher and a fitness instructor, and I did all sorts of things in that world. And then I got really sick and I fractured my spine and I was out of commission for a while, and I'm getting back into it. And I will tell you that no matter how hard it might be, and I am nowhere near where I was, doing these things 15 or 20 years ago and having to redefine what that looks like to me now in my life. It has felt so freeing and so good to get back into something like that. I've also gone back to school to re-enroll in a program to just learn new things in my journey. So I'm doing a PhD in East and West philosophy and psychology and holistic psychology. Having to use my brain again in that way, despite years of saying, oh, I have, chronic neurological Lyme, and this is one of those things, using brain retraining to get to a point where I can say, well, I might just need some new tools, but I can still do this. And this is something where I can retrain my brain and form those new neural connections and do something. Getting back out there and running and saying, well, that might be half as fast as I used to be, but I did it and it feels good. These are all things that we can start to reclaim parts of our lives, parts of our identity, even if they look a little bit different than they used to. And I really want to talk about that and maybe build some community around that, and around also creativity and art expression as a form of therapy. Instead of consumption, I think that consumption and consumerism and this constant flow of negative energy from being online, chronically online, is fueling most of our chronic illness and our chronic trauma states. We are constantly taking in a flow of traumatic information, scary information, damaging information, just a sense of overwhelm. We're getting too much sensory input 24/7 from these little boxes that we hold 6 inches away from our face. That is disrupting to our nervous system, even if we don't think it's traumatizing content. We were not designed to take in this much information every second of the day. So whether we are trying to counterbalance that through creativity and actually creating things to put out rather than consuming them, whether we are going to channel that into just mindfulness, just detoxing from the consumerism and being present and being aware of our environment, of our internal state, of our thoughts, of our bodies, mindful movement, mindful meditation, whatever that might be. These are all things that I have really been using in my own healing journey. And I've been thinking of, how do I articulate that to my healing community that I appreciate so much online? And it's a little hard because it's not something that can really be wrapped up in that scientific scripted bow with a little package the way that a lot of my old content was. So I just want to test out the waters and see if this is anything that resonates with anyone still, if anyone would be interested in more of these kind of tools related to the ebb and flow, the fluidity of healing beyond the basic brain retraining kind of science-based things that we've done here. If anyone would be interested in this idea of integrating the body with movement and, function and yoga and nature and eco-psychology and creativity and mindfulness. And if so, I will be trying to work on integrating more of that here. But again, I really want to move away from that scripted feel and move into more of this organic conversation-based way of being with this community. So if that feels interesting to anyone, please comment below. And I would love to hear from, some of our old community members where we used to engage in the comments often, and new faces that somehow found this video. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you and starting that conversation and starting this new chapter. So hope you all have an amazing week full of healing, and we will talk soon. Bye.